Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
Sometimes the left gets it right. The left, being in the Chattanooga area, Concerned Citizens for Justice. Much of what this progressive group argues for in the direction of peace in the streets and against state violence is very much on the mark. I give it my blessing, particularly where there is reference to a police abuse of working class, black, and other oppressed folks, as this group says on its website. The story is on the front of the Metro pages this morning in the Chattanooga Times Free Press. And there are questions being raised about the three candidates for chief of police. Two of them are local, Edwin McPherson and David Roddy, and one is from the gunslinging LAPD, an organization that has killed many dozens and dozens of people over the years, probably as many as have been killed by terrorists. And that candidate is Todd Chamberlain, also seeking to take the seat held for 3 years by Fred Fletcher, who retired on July the 6th. The Concerned Citizens for Justice worries about things such as the Javerio Eagle slaying of a couple years ago, and also and has an interest in the officers that are candidates for the chief having less violence rather than more. And now some of the analysis of the progressive left, I think, is useful, and I like that much of what passes on the left side as having a useful vocabulary. Now here, though, you see where their solution is not liberty, it is not godliness, it is not character, it is not mercy. Rather, the solution is often more state intervention from above, right? From the high and mighty ones. We just need to get them to do things for us, and we will all have food on our plates and doors that lock and air conditioners that run. On the coming hot days here in the Chattanooga, hot and humid is the forecast. The site says that we live in a society structured by white supremacy and exploitation under capitalism. And our communities, which are mostly made up of these oppressed people, blacks and working class people, are often in crisis and defending themselves from mass. Now, here's the good part: mass criminalization, incarceration, gentrification, and displacement. Now, much of those things are a problem among the poor precisely because of state intervention, whether it's zoning or whether it is policing. In both cases, we have the state, the arm of the state, or an agent of the state pretending to have that authority, wreaking havoc and imposing its iron will, if you will, upon the people. Now, zoning and the new wrinkle in zoning in Chattanooga does just that. And by my analysis, the zoning ordinance is illegal. It is illegal and unconstitutional for several reasons. These reasons are, if you've missed out on our analysis, you'll need to go to Nooganomics.com, our chief sponsor here on the David Tulis Show, and get caught up. It is illegal, and the penalty proposal of $50 a day in fines, that's also illegal. Yet Wade Hinton allowed it to be passed and did not say that it is illegal. You know, a lawyer is not supposed to care about justice so much as care about what you can get away with. And Wade is doing just that. If that penalty system is finally brought to bear on some recalcitrant homeowner who is going to be renting out his dwelling or her dwelling through Airbnb and other online social networking and short-term vacation rental networks on the intergalactic internet, right? There are many things that are illegal. And again, we have the progressives seeing the effects, but not giving the correct analysis. The correct analysis you would have here with me, David Tulis, here at AM 1240 and FM 92.7, and also on HD 95.3, HD4. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. YouTube is the Hot News Talk Radio channel. And on Facebook, hey, on Nooga Radio. The concern is that these neighborhoods are often in crisis and defending themselves from mass criminalization and incarceration. Now, those 2 points are indeed correct. Now, the parts about gentrification and displacement, those are a little harder to analyze. It takes longer to analyze that. But often these are problems where the poor are pushed out of the city, and that is because of price controls on houses and use controls on the use of space. Use controls and zoning are among the chief factors that force poor people to drive long distances for menial jobs in the city. And that comes because they can't live near where they work because the prices have been pushed up thanks to controls on housing and the need for the developers to build higher end properties that generate higher rents and payments because of the uses that add, John Bridger, I think, tells me in a recent interview, about a third of the cost on a house is regulatory obligation. All right, that I would suggest have very little to do with real safety and real value. The story of Chattanooga today is I think led by the apology of City Councilwoman Coonrod for her, as they say, behavior in a June encounter with police officer Tiffany Lentz and another Chattanooga Police Department officer, in which there was a commercial enforcement action imposed upon a man. The man was the so-called driver of this vehicle, this motor vehicle, and the charge against him is lack of insurance, lack of proper registration, and lack of driver's license. Now, I have analyzed these accusations in part at Nooganomics.com. And if you want to get caught up, if you want to be the man who matters and knows what really is happening, you can't not subscribe to Nooganomics. That's just all there is to it. If you want to know what's happening in truth and to be able to see past media coverage and see, media coverage often is kind of hollow and inconsequential, then you'll have to read Nooganomics.com. I'm the editor, by the way, and the blogger with the biggest pen. The biggest pen is that I write on the screen of your handheld device or your smartphone or your PC or your Mac. I write there, okay? And then I tell you what you need to know. What you didn't read, you can hear from me if you have the time, right? I do thank you for that time, a few minutes here on Nooga Radio. Mrs. Coonrod, I give her the courtesy title of Mrs. Coonrod, though she may actually go by Ms. Mrs. in Europe is always Madame is always given to women of station or women of a certain age. They always get Mrs. If you don't know, it is a courtesy title after all. And the apology that she gives, I'm reading here from the Chattanooga.com version of this story that gives her statement of the District 9 City Council woman. And her name is not Demetrius, by the way, if you're in the news business. It's Demetrus. Check the spelling. I've seen it misspelled several times. It's not Demetrius. It's Demetrus. I'm the editor, right? That's I'm the editor here, and things have to be stated correctly and grammatically. She says when she took an oath to serve and protect the citizens of Chattanooga, she goes on to say, well, for one, when you take an oath of office, you're not serving to protect, okay? That is not your duty as a city council woman. Your duty is to represent, okay? There's a difference. Protection, personal protection belongs to the individual. Now, some people think that it belongs to the police department, but that is a mistaken hope, okay? A mistaken belief that your protection is from them. Protection is a matter of self-interest. So it begins with the self, that is to say you, and it is your job to protect your personal well-being and your property, and those of the innocent, women and children first, of course, with your weapon or with your courage or your other means. She took an oath to represent these people, okay, not to protect them. Now, cops take the oath to protect. That often is voided, though, when they enter into commercial service through their trafficking and transportation statutes in Title 55. They are no longer protecting. They are, in fact, harassing. That is what happened in that traffic stop. She says, it is all too common that in my district and urban communities, African Americans such as myself disproportionately come into contact with the police and the judicial system. This is, of course, true. As a restored citizen, I know this story and journey all too well, which is why I vow to protect all citizens from any any injustices and to hold up the law with integrity and dignity. Now, the thing I would have you note in that quote from Demetrius Coonrod is that she has had a criminal past, but she has had a repentance of some kind, a turning over of her ideas, and she won office with cheer, goodwill, and care for people she met in her district as she ran for office. And though they may not have known the details of the past, they were ready to forgive her and to overlook them. And I think that's a very good thing here in Chattanooga, by the way, that a woman with a background, having been in prison, can take office. This is a very fine thing. And I'm glad. I'd say that makes Mrs. Coonrod an outstanding example of grace. Okay, God's grace. Now, here the statement continues, and she says that she understands that her actions have brought into question my leadership abilities. She says, and I would like to apologize to the constituents of District 9 and the Chattanooga community at large for my behavior. I'm sensitive, she says, towards issues of community policing. However, I realized that in hindsight, I could have handled the situation in a more proper manner. I would also like to thank Officer Tiffany Lentz and her handling the situation and for following proper protocol, refusing effectively to heed Mrs. Coonrod's demand, graciously made, to speak to Chief Fred Fletcher. The chain of command in this military organization had to be honored, and Miss Lentz did not seek to go over her supervisor's head. In fact, the supervisor was called, and I believe the arrested party, Mrs. Coonrod, and the man behind the wheel left before that supervisor arrived with a citation of Mr. Gladden, Anthony Gladden, going to be hailed on the 24th of July into the inferior courts of the city. Now, the question about this apology is, it seems to me, rather pro forma, and the news is not there. Okay, the news is not in the apology. Really, it is more in the overall fact of what happened. And I want to mention this because we have in Nashville yesterday, we have a double whammy against this kind of action. Now, people such as Mike Steele, my noted caller here on the David Tulis show, is right to point out that everybody involved here is involved in commerce, and there's no reason to think that they should be exempted in any way from commercial enforcement. And you say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Well, traffic stops are all really called transportation stops. They're stops for people involved in commerce. In commerce, well, commerce is the buying and selling of services that bring people or goods from point A to point B. That's what commerce is. That's also called transportation. And Title 55 of the Tennessee Code, where the driver's license statute is about transportation. And Anthony Gladden is being charged under that statute with driving without a license. Now, I have made I've not published it yet, but last year I made a detailed study of statutory construction and the particular statute that's called Exhibit on Demand, and that, I believe, is what he is is being charged under. Though Rob Simmons of the Chattanooga Police Department yesterday, or the day before yesterday, did not answer my question as to whether Mr. Gladden is in fact charged under that statute, because that statute does not apply to people who don't have driver licenses. It applies only to licensees. If you're a licensee, the statute said such licensee is to have his license, such licensee's license with him at all times upon demand of a deputy or a sessions court judge or officer. And Anthony, does not have a driver license, and yet he was behind the wheel of a car. Now, I proposed defenses for his case, and you can read what those defenses are at Nooganomics.com. The website for The Man Who Matters, I do suggest you subscribe to Nooganomics.com if you want to know how the deep state of our day, that right-wing talk show hosts are now starting to talk about, how it works on the state level. And that is what we look at. And I look at that operation because it is highly prejudicial to local economy and the free market. Mike, in my caller, says that everybody in this story deserves what they get. And in fact, he says he would have taken both of them into custody. Well, there was no cause to take Mrs. Coonrod into custody, as she was not behind the wheel. But neither of these two defendants, neither of these two people in this arrest, it was an actual arrest. When you're not free to leave, you are under arrest. Okay, period. It's not detention. You are under arrest. If you say, "Am I free to leave?" and the answer is no, well, you're under arrest. Now, Officer Lentz did not Mirandize Mr. Gladden nor Mrs. Coonrod. She should have done that once an arrest is made. An arrest was made, though no one was taken into custody. Why? Because there is a system in place that allows state statute traffic offenses to be handled by the city and charged in the city. Now, there's a money-making operation there that I'm not going to get into here, but it has, I think, a suspicious legal basis and maybe an ineffectual or insufficient legal basis. Though I haven't nailed down exactly how that is. I haven't read far enough into it. Yeah, I'm committing myself to do a read on Title 55. It's a huge green volume of, I don't know, 400 or 500 pages. But in there are the mysteries unveiled that I think I need to get to the bottom of, and whether or not Tennessee state government delegated to Chattanooga and Chattanooga to its executive branch, Mayor Burke, and Mayor Burke to the police department, the authority to enforce these statutes and do other things that are criminal offenses. These are questions that are being raised by Basil Marceau, you might say the crank candidate for governor. And Mr. Basil Marceau yesterday gave me an interview discussing some of his platform of his race. He is a unusual man, and he was in Nashville to hear the J. Hirsch case. Now, this case gave a double whammy to the state on two counts. Number one, the biggest case in 80 years argued yesterday in Chattanooga, and Nooga Radio had its man there, and that man was me. Go to our Facebook page. We're live on Facebook, and you, my listener, I strongly urge you to be there and to keep fresh there. Tell me if my bow tie works today, if you wouldn't mind. I know you don't care, but ask your wife if she thinks it fits. Okay? If your wife thinks my bow tie works, then I have a thumbs up, right? If she says no, then it's thumbs down on Tulis's selection for the morning. My wife, Jeanette, she did sweetly embrace me as I departed. I don't think she lowered her eyes down past my chin to see if it worked. But sometimes I get away from her without her giving a passing approval. And I think this morning is one of those mornings where I escaped without getting an official affirmation of my selection. But we are live there, and your Nooga Radio, our multimedia platform, seeking liberty, promoting liberty, and seeking the prosperity of the Chattanooga area, the Chattanooga free market. We want Chattanooga to be an independent city-state past your obtaining a gravestone and past mine, okay? We want there to be more liberty in Chattanooga. I'm thinking in the direction of a 50% tax cut and into public schools, and an exuberant, vibrant market in the tech sector and in the education sector, led by free market people. Now they're already working on this prospect. We just have to wait for the people at the representation level in the city council, county commission to think in terms of divestment, right? Divesting themselves of areas in which they have no competence, market areas in which there is no competence, and there is a lot of feather bedding, padding, and sinecurism, securing people's jobs and long-term health benefits and welfare benefits who are on the state and city county payroll. Let's get some of them off, and let's have a free market. The Hirsch argument is for the right of travel, and also, here's why it's a double whammy, for the right to wear and bear and own and carry a firearm of any kind you want, any kind of weapon you want without permission. We're not going to get constitutional carry in the legislature from any of the candidates. Probably we would if May Beavers wins the Republican primary. She's the only constitutional candidate, May Beavers, and she doesn't have millions of dollars of private money backing her as Tim Boyd. But you can't easily get constitutional carry by politics, as we know, because the Republicans have defeated it time and again. But an appeal in court might bring that about, and that argument was made against the existing statute, which is to say the intent to go armed statute, which is unconstitutionally vague at Title 29. the offenses volume. And it is unconstitutionally vague. And Jay Hirsch made that argument yesterday. You can hear a little bit more about that at our Facebook page. And I'm almost done with my report from the hearing before the Court of Criminal Appeals yesterday. You'll have to keep tuned to Nooganomics.com and subscribe to it, the website for the man who matters. What happened yesterday? It touches on the Coonrod arrest, the Coonrod and Gladden arrest, because they are alleged to have been in commerce. Now, there is a defense for Anthony Gladden. Anthony Gladden has a defense, but it requires a change of thinking that probably he doesn't have time to make between now and July 28 when his hearing is. Now, he can delay, and I think he should go for a trial. But that depends on whether you have attorney, whether you have guts, whether you have knowledge of your rights to assert them as your defense. This is David Tulis, Nooganomics.com, and AM 1240 FM 92.7 Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader.